Electric Lodge presents Notes from the Underground with Josh Berkowitz, where we talk to alternative storytellers, comedians, dancers, musicians, poets, and filmmakers about life, art, and we may just talk about nothing at all. Recorded live from Soul Journey Studios in Venice Beach, California. All right, we're here with Mitsu Salmon, who is an incredible performance artist who I got the pleasure of seeing a couple years ago. When did you come for High Voltage? Do you remember when?
I don't remember.
Like 2 years ago, almost, or like a year and a half ago. Yeah, so Mitsu's here from Chicago, and you're here for just a week, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, so we had talked. I'm trying to remember. Was it around December when you came in and we caught up? Yeah, and I remember we had a good conversation about stuff. But I'm thinking about your piece that you did a year and a half ago, and I remember there was like you had taken this big piece of paper, giant piece of paper, along the wall, and you were drawing things out, right? Or am I imagining?
Yeah,
that?
no.
Okay.
This is
And you work a lot with genealogy.
Oh yeah, I
correct?
work a lot with like family stories.
I love family stories. Yeah.
So this particular piece I'm doing tonight is a really short piece, and it does deal a little bit with family history. In terms of like watching Christy Yamaguchi. Do you know the ice skater?
Right. Yeah. It's funny because I think we had this conversation over the phone, but we didn't get to go deeply enough into it. But I was fascinated with just that, you taking her as a subject.
Yeah. So yeah, Christy Yamaguchi, she's an Olympic ice skater. She's Japanese American. So it was just very, I was watching her, I forget how, I was 10. And I was watching her with my grandmother who was from Japan, my grandfather who is Japanese, but from Hawaii, and as well as their friends, like from the Japanese American community. And in their community, some of their best friends, my grandparents were not in internment camps because my grandfather lived in Hawaii, my grandmother lived in Japan, but almost all of their friends in LA had been in internment camps.
Wow. And
Christy Yamaguchi, her family was in internment camps. Her mother was born in an internment camp. So it's just really incredible to like watch this with my family and their friends and be like, whoa, there's a Japanese American like woman representing the USA and like winning a gold medal. Like it was just like, I think it was just like a really, so that's the moment I kind of talk a little bit about with my family and thinking I start working on this piece. Like I start working on this piece maybe like 3 years ago and kind of it wasn't working and I just kind of let it go. And then I did this piece for Trump's anti-inauguration event, Emergency Cabaret. And so, cause I start thinking about, in terms of the registry and thinking about how that, and in the Japanese American community, a lot of people are very outspoken against that and the ban and starting to think about like, okay, what are the parallels? And so then I kind of start working on this piece again. And right now it's only like 10 minutes, but it possibly could be longer. So that's a little bit of family history, but most of my pieces in the last few years, a lot of them have dealt with, like I just did this big piece at Lynx Hall I was telling you about.
Yeah, right.
So there's a space in Chicago called Lynx Hall, and they have a residency where they give you space for 6 months and a stipend and a mentor. And I worked with the story of my grandmother's experience of growing up in Japan during the war and her living out in nature and her house being occupied by U.S. soldiers and meeting my grandfather. So it's primarily a dance performance with some text, but I've been working on that piece for 6 months.
Wow.
But it's I didn't want to bring it because it's about a 45 to 50 minute piece and it requires a lot of branches. So I need to find some place.
Branches?
Yeah, like
tree branches.
Tree branches.
Oh, right. We had talked something about this, about an installation. I don't know what the exact conversation was, but we were talking about how to get that here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great. You're wondering where to get some tree branches?
It's like, yeah, pretty much. I have to collect. It's just a big process because I have to collect tree branches. I have to have time to rehearse with them again because they're going to be different than the ones I worked with. Yeah. I'm going to have to like get transportation. So it's like a big, if I want to keep doing this piece in other cities, but it's like I can't just come in for a day and do it. It's like I'll have to come in for like a week.
It'd be a residency.
It'd be a residency. Like I have to collect the branches. I have to like, work on it.
You know, Guri and Roxanne who lived down there. Yeah, of course, right? Yeah. Yeah, and your dad does a lot of work with Roxanne. And they had a giant bamboo pole that they used for a performance a while ago. And I mean, there's so many things to talk about. First of all, I have to announce that I love your dad, Will Salmon. He did an incredible performance last week, and him and I just hung out talking afterward about ideas and things. And I just appreciate his energy. It's funny. I'm speaking of family, since and I know him. We were just talking about that energy, that high. He's always been that way. That high kind of like open energy of like all smiles and fun. I mean, not all the time. I'm sure he gets down, and we all get down who are high. But like, I'm curious. So you've absorbed that, and he said, you guys are close. You've absorbed that energy in some ways, but you have a very different energy than him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess, my dad, I started doing dance with him when I was about 8 years old. So, I mean, he's pretty much.
Video that?
I don't think we have any. We have some pictures. We have
pictures. I would enjoy seeing a picture of that. Yeah. So you dance together. What kind of dances?
It was just like contemporary modern dance. Like we started doing that when I was little, and singing, but then when I got into kind of like a teenager, I really distanced myself from him because that's the way teenagers are.
Teenagers do. Yeah, I didn't get to do that enough with my parents, and then I went through my teenage years as an adult. Yeah. So that happens sometimes for some people. Jewish guys sometimes. Yeah.
But so he's he came to Chicago. He's come to like different places I've lived, and everybody loves him. Like he came to Berlin when I was living at a squat, like it was a women, lesbian, transgender squat.
Hell yeah.
With like graffiti, and like we weren't paying rent,
in Berlin.
All these squats are gone now. But he jumped right in. Like it was amazing. Like we had this event, and he performed, and then my friends were doing a rehearsal where they're like, okay, we're going to pretend you're handcuffed to something in the house. And she was like tying strings, now convulse. And my dad's like doing this. He's like convulsing on the floor, imagining he's handcuffed. And
I can see it so clearly.
So he's like, he's super open. Like we performed together in Japan, and he came to Chicago, and we performed together. But so I feel like my like love of arts and this kind of flexibility or spaciness I have comes from him. But my mother, she was born in Tokyo. She's Japanese, and she's a businesswoman. So I feel like I have kind of both of those. Hopefully I have a little bit of her side in terms of
combinations of things are usually good.
Yeah, of course I'm my own self and not a combination of either of them as well. But, I'm sure I feel like that definitely influenced me in terms of having this father that was very open, but also having this mother that was very graceful. She's very graceful and thinks before she speaks, definitely,
And he doesn't.
No, not always, right? Which is part.
I'm the same way. I've said more things out loud the last week on this podcast. By the way, this podcast is called Notes from the Underground.
Oh, like Dostoevsky?
Yeah, you're the only one who knew that.
Yeah, I love that book.
You think I'm going to get sued by Dostoevsky's estate?
I think so.
I quote it. It's an homage to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, that's actually been quite influential in my work.
Ooh,
because
this is good.
I love the kind of self-conscious like a beginning where he's like, how am I going to write? Am I writing this okay? And he kind of like goes over
like
and you're like, what? I've never seen a book where the person's like criticizing themselves as they write it.
I'm a sucker for anything meta, anything self-conscious. I'm a sucker for. I mean, I don't know if like that comes into a lot of your work. It seems to be in the work that I've
definitely
witnessed. Yeah. Where do you think that came from? I mean, there's the genealogy part, and then there's that. I mean, do you relate the two, or that's a separate kind of interest of yours?
Maybe they're connected. I mean,
in some way, right?
Reading Dostoevsky and like looking at Brecht, and then looking at performance artists like Karen Finley, who will like break character, and she'll just be like, I just saw her the other day and she was doing something and she's like, what do you guys think of my jeans? Hold on, I need to get into angry bitch mode. And so she's like, but she's like sitting there talking about her clothing, and then she like goes for it. And I really love that kind of just kind of being natural with an audience. So maybe that's a sense of like, I've always been curious about how to just talk to an audience as myself, or just to be, kind of comfortable with an audience and kind of break that fourth wall.
Yeah. Wow. That's wild. Yeah. I'm just thinking about when I read the notes from the underground. I was working at a production office in Los Feliz for my buddy, and he took me in. It was like a bad time in my life.
Okay.
And he took me in, and I would read notes from the underground in his work closet. And I'd edit experimental films in there while he was making like Spielbergian, real projects or quote unquote, he was working on commercials and things like that. And I was just literally in his closet reading Dostoevsky and Bukowski. And I'm, I have a great, setup now here. And I always am afraid to go back to that poet, that really self-conscious poet world. But I'm still in that. But, it takes time with these things. And I was talking last night with somebody about the poet versus the performer. You clearly, when we were talking about this with the combination of your parents' influences, that, on one side there's an internal quality and on the other side there's an external quality. So I guess, meta work is ridiculous. Have you seen any Charlie Kaufman's work?
Some of it. Yeah.
Synecdoche, New York, goes.
Okay.
Philip Seymour Hoffman plays the main character, and he basically gets a $50,000. He's a director, and he's directing Death of a Salesman, and he's directing it with younger people. And he's like, the tragedy is that they someday will get older. And he gets a $50,000 grant. But then, as the film, I won't ruin it for you, but I guess I will partially ruin it for you. Yeah, the film, he starts building these performance art pieces within performance art pieces, and these domes within domes, and these pieces within pieces. So it's fascinating to me. I've done it a lot in my own work. Oh, I'm hearing some feedback. It's all good. Yeah, no problem. We're still working it out. Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I have to. No, it's great. No, thank you. No, that's totally fine. We're doing a podcast here, and it's been incredible this week and very stressful to get this thing going, but totally worth it. A labor of love. What's that? We got 10. I think you're the 10th person we interviewed this week.
Cool.
We have 2 more today, and then hopefully we'll take a break after, maybe take a break next week, set the rest of it up, and then go from there. But I want to talk about random work that you've done, possibly in Berlin, what Berlin really did for you.
Oh,
yeah.
I really liked. So I was living in New York. I went to undergrad at NYU and studied experimental theater. But after I graduated, I found, this is going to get into Berlin, part of the contrast is New York. I felt it was really challenging. You have to, live very far away. I was doing teaching artist stuff. I was working a lot, commuting a lot. And people would be like, if I wanted to do a show, they would let me do it a year later, and I had to show documentation of that piece. So it's I couldn't make any new work, basically. I could only show previous work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I struggle with that. Yeah.
Now I'd be okay because I have enough. But at that point, I just graduated underground. And so I really wanted to make new work. So I was getting these emails from a friend who was living at that squat, and it just sounded wonderful. She's like, I'm performing all these time at these bars and these clubs. I work 1 day a week. Oh. And my job, doing children's theater, said we don't have a job for you in the next 3 months. It was the summer or something like that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to Berlin for 3 months. And I didn't come back to New York. They called me, and I'm like, so I was living in a squat, teaching 1 day a week, and just really living cheaply. And I'd go and perform pretty much every week and get paid with drinks and food.
Oh, right. Okay, you've talked to me about this. What does that feel like in that moment? I mean, we kind of briefly went over this together, but I want to I want you to reiterate it for me, because I don't remember exactly. I don't know if I really asked you totally in depth. I get jealous a little bit when you tell me about this, because it's ooh, that's so romantic in a way, right? But also maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, it was also because I had to constantly produce. I was constantly producing new work, which was super exciting. But I also, it was a lot of there are people there's this one piece I came up with, which was a librarian piece. Like I had this idea, but it was because it was like at a party atmosphere and people were really loud. So I had to yell at people to be quiet and pretend we're in a library. But it seemed to work because it wasn't like I was telling them to be quiet because I was doing a performance. I was telling them to all, like, I was quieting the audience because we were in a library. And, you know, so
That's awesome.
and other spaces were actually like performance spaces, like a performance art festival. But there were atmospheres where it was like a party. So sometimes I would play with that where I wasn't doing like a presentational piece. I was going around to audiences.
Yeah, roaming characters are great for parties. Roaming performances and durational kind of, they can kind of come and go.
Yeah.
You don't have to control their attention as much, right?
But so it was really fun. But at the same time, I was studying Buto. There's a big Buto community in Berlin. I think maybe the post-World War kind of like complex.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to go to Japan. And I was feeling the sense of like, oh, it's great. I lived there in Berlin for about 8 months.
Right.
But then I was feeling a sense of like, I think I want more depth in my work. And I was feeling like, because it's very kind of a lot of entertaining or kind of dealing with, so I really wanted to go to Japan and learn Buto and get in touch with like my mom's history, like my ancestors. And so I thought I was going to live in Japan for a year, but it ended up, I loved it. So I lived there for 3 years. So, yeah.
Incredible. Yeah, you just travel a lot. I mean, there's just something nice about trusting yourself and your experience and bringing your body and self to different places and being like, I'm going to go do this. I mean, for a while, I was traveling a lot just between Michigan, LA, and New York, like back and forth as a geographical solution. Is there anything negative in it like that for you? But your experiences are so beautiful that it doesn't sound like that's what it is, where you're looking for the next place to fulfill you in some way. I don't know if that's at all your experience. It sounds like you really have an intentionality to when you go someplace.
Yeah. I mean, it can be challenging in many ways, like integrating into the culture. And then like, I think for me, it was hard to like, so after Japan, then I lived in Indonesia for a year, doing a painting residency.
Yeah. I saw a picture of you painting with your feet, which I've talked to you briefly about, or painting with your toes. Yeah.
I love painting with my toes.
Yeah. How often do you do it?
I think, it depends. If I'm working on a piece that has that, it's like, every day. I also do other things. I feel like every piece I do something with my toes. Like I was lifting sake glasses on
sake glass?
Yeah,
sake glasses.
Sake, alcohol. Yeah, no, the glasses
with your toes?
With my toes. The last one I've been lifting branches with my toes. I just think like the foot is like can be as expressive as the hands, So I've been really interested in the dexterity or how it can. So yeah, I do a lot of. I'm really into picking up things with your feet.
Yeah. You're like what was it? I never even seen the movie My Left Foot.
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Oh yeah, I saw that as a kid. Maybe that really influenced me unconsciously.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I reminded you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Wow, there's just so many different directions we can go. Tell me a little bit about the Chicago performance art scene. And I heard Defibrillator is a good space.
Yeah, they're great. They have Defibrillator is run by this guy, Joseph Ravens, who's a performance artist.
And he is very, he encourages pretty heavy duty, like if you blood on the, okay.
He's very open, but he's also open to other things too. Like I don't do that in my work, and he's been very supportive.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
He has this, one of the things they have is a Rapid Pulse Festival, which happens every summer for about a week in June. And that brings in artists from all over the world, which is awesome. And he gets like consulates or those particular countries, like Norway might even pay for the artists themselves. So, he's able to kind of, it's very challenging, but somehow to like have these artists come and maybe it's people like just offering their place for these artists to stay at. But it's a wonderful festival because it's artists from all over the world that come and show work for about a week. And some of it you're like, oh, not my thing. And some of it I've seen and I'm like, I think it's Alistair McCulster. I believe he's kind of an older performance artist.
Alistair McCulster?
I think that's the name. I have to, but
Okay.
he's a well-known kind of older performance artist, and he did a piece like outside, and that was like, it was just so beautiful. Like the attention of the audiences, because they're coming to see performance art, they're not looking to be entertained. So I feel like it's the quality of the audience. I mean, the quality of the work is amazing, but the quality of the audience
They can settle in better.
They can be quiet and just look at something for an hour where someone's just kind of moving a little bit, and it's just like, it's amazing. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I do appreciate that about, I mean, that's both the criticism, but also the glory of performance art is that the audience, like, I'm going to see a play next Wednesday, Long Day's Journey tonight, 3 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm trying to get back into theater. It was interesting. Somebody told me yesterday, they were like, oh, I hear it's not very good. I'm like, man, well, I like things that are long. I have a pretty long attention span. And even if I get bored, I like dealing as an audience person with the discomfort. I like dealing with that. And, you know, I think Oguri and Roxanne play on that from Body Weather Laboratories. They are uncompromising. And, you know, wherever the audience settles into your work, that's up to them. And I even talked to Amelia about this too, is like, they got to come to you. I mean, what's your relationship to an audience?
It's different because I definitely go to audiences. I also have, for me, it's like, I don't intentionally, like, some work I feel like can go, I try to come to the audience. I have tried to have them come to me, but I feel like I want it to be both ways. So some pieces, like this piece that I'm doing, is pretty much I'm coming to the audience. This last piece I was working with for the last 6 months, it was actually a combination. It was some really slow movement, but where they'd have to come to me, and then I would come around and I was like feeding the audience cake, you know, and having them like do things as well. So it's, for me, I'm interested in this kind of interaction. Like sometimes it's like I'm doing something really slow and they have to come to me, but then maybe the next second I'm doing something where it's like, hey, how are you doing? You know?
Yeah, I like that. So you're playing with two different energies. I mean, you know, I find that to be really important. I mean, it was a big, I mean, I'm known for my more manic work, but at a certain point I started finding out that total stillness was a even better way to capitalize on the more manic work, like was to, play both sides of the field, play both ends of the spectrum in terms of energy. And it really, at least for me, it's not, I'm just preface it by saying this. I don't think of manipulation as a bad word in this context, but it, you know, it really does keep an audience with you if you can play with those two sides of the spectrum of something, of going toward them and then pulling back.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to put this on you, but I mean, I like messing with an audience, although I'm not as defensive as I used to be when I mess with them. Now I know that I should respect them as well. You know, that's really important. But I don't know if you think about it that way, as messing with the audience or just disturbing them at all, or like, how do you treat an audience? I mean, I know you told me like the ways that you know, affect them and come to them or not, like, but how do you see an audience? Like, how important are they?
They're pretty important, I think.
Pretty important. I'll take your word for that. I think so too. I've learned that over time. I used to think they weren't important, and then when there was nobody there, I'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Just relevant.
But I mean, if there's 5 people too, that's important too.
Right.
I mean, even if it's a small audience, like that's really important as well. And I feel like for my relationships change with the audience depending, like, I feel like, but I definitely, I don't feel like an aggressive thing towards an audience. Sometimes I like disorienting or confusing, I guess, because I feel like the story that I'm telling is disorienting, or the experience I'm trying to convey, for example, of like diaspora, of my family moving, is disorienting and nonlinear, and so I want to, it's fine that people are confused. But I guess, I'm really interested in structure. And for example, like, I don't want to give everything away sometimes with pieces. I want to give, but I don't want the audience to be completely in the dark. So I like to give, sometimes I like to think of ideas of puzzles.
Ooh.
And it's like, I'll give you this thing, and how you put it together. And again, this piece I'm doing is very different. It's more, but some of the longer pieces I do, it's like a puzzle. And maybe the way this person puts it together is going to be very different than this person. And I'm really interested in that.
Right,
like,
right.
Your experience might be, and how you read the work, there's certain important things that I want everyone to get to, but other things are less important. And I'm actually curious how you might read that movement or that image or that symbol, and maybe how this person reads it is different than how I intended it, and might be very interesting. And this person, read it a different way. So I'm interested in kind of like audiences participating both like physically, like being part of it, but also mentally in terms of them being like, okay, how, like how does this, them kind of developing the work on their own. So that's kind of the last few longer pieces I've done. I've thought a lot about ideas of structure and how I can structure it so that,
you know, there's a seriousness to the fact that you work so long on a piece, and you know, and you build it for such a long period of time. What's driving you to do this? Because obviously we could be somewhere else, and you know, we could be doing something else. Like, what's
like, what could you imagine us doing? Like,
nothing else. But I was like, no, I couldn't think of anything else. I was like, I used to be like a movie theater usher.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if I want to go back to that exactly.
Yeah.
But you know, I think that drove me here. And you know, I was at the Pasadena Playhouse the other day, and I'm going to the Geffen this week, and like I'm like, you know, I could try to work in that system. What's driving you to do your own work and find your ways to both travel? And I mean, you've been in Chicago though, you're a little settled there now.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to go traveling for a while.
And you're going to Hong Kong, right?
I'm going to Hong Kong, and then I got a residency in Taiwan.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, which is great. In the countryside in Taiwan, where it's like a studio, and it's a beautiful old Japanese structure, because it used to be where Japanese sugar refinery.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's such a broad question.
Yeah, well, I'll ask you this now. Like, it's coming out of jealousy once again for you traveling. You must work really hard to get those residencies in Taiwan and be able to travel and do all that stuff. I mean, I know I work really hard right now at being a curator, and it's almost, you know, I was talking to my therapist today about like workaholism, like, and that's like a new thing for me. I transferred it from other habits. This is like a new thing, is for me to obsess about work. I don't know if you have any of that.
I really try to balance.
You seem healthy to me.
But I definitely work. I'm often really busy, and it like applying for these certain residencies and grants. Like I was working on this piece, but I couldn't go on the weekends because I was like rehearsing and teaching and then applying to these things. And so I would feel jealous sometimes when I was doing this. Like friends are like, we're going to go out. And I'm like, this residency's due like tomorrow morning. Like I can't go out. So for like a month there, I was like not going out on weekends and things like that. So, so there was a little bit of a work. I was working a little too much, but at the same time, I also like try to eat well and sleep and these kind of things.
Trying to eat well suddenly, because at the beginning of this week, my stomach was really bad. I keep talking about this. Why am I revealing this stuff? And so good material. It's interesting. Yeah, and so I've been paying for like more expensive juices and stuff like that. It's like you gotta like right on Abbott Kinney, so I might as well like spend all my money on the things that they offer there food wise, which is all vegan and vegetarian, and maybe that'll hurt my stomach less, or a ginger shot at least.
Yeah, I want to answer your question about why, but like I was having stomach problems too, and it was connected like a few years ago, and it was connected with anxiety. And I went to a regular doctor, and they're trying to give me medicine, and it wasn't working. Yeah. Acupuncture, actually. I went to acupuncture, and it seemed to really help.
Acupuncture helped with anxiety.
Because it was connected, the stomach was connected with the anxiety, which the doctors can't give you. They try to give you a pill for anxiety and for the stomach, and both of them, like, it doesn't really work.
The anxiety pill probably hurts your stomach.
Yeah. And it's like, and they both, it's kind of like, so having the acupuncture, I think it really, I think because they saw it as connected. There's certain points where it's stomach as connected to anxiety. So it's like they saw the kind of connection of the two, And after doing that, I mean, I made life changes too, but it was a lot of that actually.
Yeah.
Like going every couple weeks.
Yeah. So, yeah, somebody I was just telling you before we started interviewing, a good friend of mine who works here, he's like, you got a lot, he's like, you're dealing with a lot of anxiety. And I felt like condescended that anxiety was, that he used the word anxiety with me, but of course I'm fucking anxious as hell. I'm a really anxious person. No, my thing is either I'm really anxious and panicked or like zen as can be.
Yeah.
I'm one or the other.
Yeah.
I know other people like that too.
Yeah.
But I'm either a ray of sunshine or just a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
That basically, it's like I'm either letting go or not. I'm either in surrender or not. I don't know if you have that experience at all.
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. But I want to get back to your question of like, why are you doing, even though it's really hard to answer.
We're trying to find the answer through our side discussions, our detours, maybe. Yeah, the inner need. I mean, like the other thing is you grew up art, creating things was a muscle you had built from an early age. Yeah,
and my father, I think, seeing that, like, going to theaters late at night with my dad when he was rehearsing, and
beautiful.
I think that kind of his love of that, like his enjoyment of that kind of, and then my enjoyment of that kind of like made that really interesting for me. And I always enjoyed like painting or dancing, like doing these different disciplines. I've always enjoyed that, but it's always been a struggle too in terms of which one am I going to pick, right?
Ooh.
And then I think and I still always think about that because I feel like, if I picked one, maybe I'd be more successful. But in terms of, I don't really pick one. Maybe at a certain time I have to focus more towards one, or pieces, like I got a painting residency in Bali. So I was focused more on painting. In Chicago is a dance space, Lynx Hall. It's a beautiful dance space I got. So the piece is more geared towards dance.
Yeah.
But now I'm starting to see that the integration, I've really tried to like embrace more of this, that it is about this integration for me. And it is about, this integration of disciplines, and how this has also helped me in terms of like even just work as a teacher. I teach theater, or I'll teach visual arts. I have like this camp during the summer I teach. It's called a multi-arts camp. So I have like the kids build paper mache masks, which then we perform with, which I videotape with, and then have them do sound over, so things like this. But I was also curious about, like, I've also started to think about these ideas of different disciplines, and maybe this connects as connected to different cultures.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I think in terms of like how is something translated.
Yeah.
And for me too, like I think I feel like if I wasn't an artist, I'd have a very different experience of travel, because like when I went to Japan, I had a friend who wasn't an artist, and he couldn't like get integrated. They were very like kind of standoffish to him. But I was like in an avant-garde like space, and I was in a dance company. I got integrated because I was in a dance company in Japan. So I cooked with them. I was learning the language. So I think it also, as well as like really wanting to make the work, and there's certain images or things that are really beautiful or moving that I feel that, or funny, that I want to witness and have exist in the world, as well as be part of. But it's also about, okay, this has opened up different, like I see like the benefit of like, maybe financially it's not as rich, but performance in terms of community can be quite rich,
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, community is a new thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you're curating right now, so you're pretty instrumental in terms of creating spaces where people are coming together and sharing.
Yeah, right. I didn't like the word community for a while.
It has kind of like
community.
It sounds like you're writing a grant or something like that.
It sounds like a grant, or like some kind of like
like we're gonna hug each other.
Yeah, kumbaya.
Yeah, I totally feel that.
But now it's like community's like life or death now. I mean, with everything going on, like we stick together and all that stuff. So it's funny. I was when I first started working here, I was pulling up weeds in the back of the electric lodge, like in this back area that nobody usually goes back to, and there was a garden, yeah, and I was pulling up weeds, and Patrick Varon, the exec director, managing director, he came out to see how I was doing, and I like had dirt all over my hands. I turned to him and I was like, I've never done anything for the community before. So that was a big moment. That was like a big turning point for me.
But you do things all the time for the community. I mean, like,
I know, but I was more if you think about Notes from the Underground, that character, it was all like isolation. And, I mean, so, yeah, that's tough because as the poet, or Bukowski or certain poets kind of say it's all about, or Emily Dickinson, it was like, it was all about being alone.
Yeah.
And then, I was kind of mentioning briefly, like these archetypes I've built in my mind. I'm curious what you think of these. It's like the poet for me, at least my assumption is it's an archetype of something isolated, internal, and gritty, and then the performer is a bit more of a kind of charisma thing, and more of a community thing, and more of a kind of outreach extrovert thing. I mean, these are just like false, kind of terms I use, but yeah, and it's funny. Your dad, it feels like a poet to me in some way. I mean, in the way he performs, he's a performer, and it's big and loud and all that, and chaotic and wonderful in that energy.
Yeah.
But like, he doesn't give a shit about like the marketing and the whatever. He's like, he just wants to do the fucking work.
Yeah.
Like, he wants to like put it out there, and because it like he needs to.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe you picked up on his need at some point, or was there a moment growing up where it was like, this is what I'll do for the rest of my life? Or
I mean, I kind of rejected it too, maybe because it was my dad. I think I didn't want to just be, I think also in some of my work, it is quite different than some of the work that like I was doing were things that he wasn't always interested in too,
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know. Yeah. Like I'm sure I picked up on his need, but I also rejected that at a certain point, and then also was making work that I felt like, oh, maybe he's not going to approve of this.
Right. But there was a certain point where, I mean, in any case, it's like, how do you kind of take that leap to own? It's funny. I was saying when I was showing these like experimental films actually at that production office in Los Feliz, and they were all like conventional USC grad film students, great, brilliant guys and really skilled in a way that I'm not. But and then they were giving me their critique, and I didn't want to hear it. But then I kind of thought this thing to myself, and also maybe said it out loud. I was like, it's all about a mixture of sticking to your guns, being a sponge, but also sticking to your guns. So I don't know what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's challenging, but like soaking in things, but also having a vision in terms of being flexible. But also, that's definitely always a balance, because it's like, oh, I'm getting this, because it's like going to, other places or working in different disciplines. It's like I definitely input can definitely affect me, and I think. But you also want to have like a vision too. But I just wanted to go back the poet thing, but I feel like I can only like think of the beats or something in terms of, but they would work by themselves, but then wouldn't they share with each other?
Right. That's a great example of how to. I mean, I think it's ultimately a balance, right? It's like going to the deepest, most private place and then bringing it public.
Yeah.
Or the it could be outside in too. Or taking it from the public and going back and home and reflecting on it. Yeah, these are just concepts here. So tell me, just before we're done, I want to hear a little bit more about your piece tonight.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, I mean, I kind of explained in terms of the I made it originally on it was as an anti-inauguration piece, and thinking about what was happening is a response in terms of what was happening in terms of the protests, the Women's March, the Muslim registry. And so it's kind of like it was a piece that I was working on this piece at Links Hall that was a 6-month piece, and it was kind of like a it felt kind of like a serious piece. It wasn't towards the end that I started to actually put humor into that work. So I wanted a break from that. So I did this piece, which I'm showing tonight, which is like different Japanese American characters of myself in some sense, kind of looking at what's happening and doing an emergency preparedness workshop. And so it's just kind of the beginning. It's either it's going to exist on its own, or it's like the beginning of a possibly longer work. Because it's like now I want to keep working on these kind of slower works that I'm going to Taiwan to look at my great-grandfather's work in Taiwan and botany. But at the same time, maybe it's the Berlin side, because like I want to like do some funny stuff in clubs and bars and stuff like that in Chicago. And I feel like this character or these characters could totally, like I did another one where it's about money and I'm like pouring, it was like also like pouring pennies all over myself, but then like starting to count them because I've been there, you know? So I think this piece is kind of, like maybe more towards like the Berlin side in terms of like what a piece that I could perform at at those kind of spaces and that I want to continue to do. So, yeah.
So awesome. Well, I really appreciate us getting to talk in this context. It's really awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you to our sound engineer and studio manager, Jeremy Lawrence.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to Open Temple and Rabbi Laurie Shapiro for allowing this to be possible, and Dr. Joel Shapiro of Electric Lodge, the founder and artistic director. I really appreciate this space and community.
Yeah.
Community's okay. Community's all right. So I'll stick with it for now. Yeah. All right. There you go. Awesome.
Thanks.
This has been Electric Lodge Presents Notes from the Underground with Josh Berkowitz. We hope you enjoyed and tune in next time. Recorded live from Soul Journey Studios in Venice Beach, California.